Hello, everybody. This is my faith integration based on the Common Rule or the Common Act, which applies to research and research subjects. The information that I'm going to be talking about is stated from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. We're just going to give a little bit of a detailed background on the Common Rule or what it is, stated directly from the website. So, this policy applies to all research involving human subjects conducted, supported, or otherwise subject to regulation by any federal department or agency that takes appropriate administrative action to make the policy applicable to such research. This includes research conducted by federal civilian employees or military personnel, except that each department or agency head may adopt such procedural modifications as may be appropriate from an administrative standpoint. It also includes research conducted, supported, or otherwise subject to regulation by the federal government outside the United States. Institutions that are engaged in research described in this paragraph and institutional review boards reviewing research that is subject to this policy must comply with this policy. Now, the patient population I chose was prisoners. And here's a little bit of a definition on that. And as much as prisoners may be under constraints because of their incarceration, which could affect their ability to make a truly voluntary and unconcerned decision whether or not to participate as subjects in research, it is the purpose of the subpart to provide additional safeguards for the protection of prisoners involved in activities to which this subpart is applicable. Now, essentially, this is providing protections to prisoners because some prisoners are not going to have the mental capacity to be a part of a study or have it not be biased. But there is some form of ability for them to make their own autonomy and decisions to participate in these research studies. Now, some of the protections that are put in place for prisoners are Secretary Means, which is the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and any other officer or employee of the Department of Health and Human Services to whom authority has been delegated. So, whoever the secretary delegates as authority for the patient, whether it's themselves or if they choose to have someone else be essentially their secretary or their means of authority. Two, the DHHS means that the Department of Health and Human Services. So obviously, it needs to be regulated through the DHHS. So for prisoner, it means any individual involuntarily confined or detained in a penal institution. The term is intended to encompass individuals sentenced to such an institution under a criminal or civil statute, individuals detained in other facilities by virtue or statutes or commitment procedures, which provide alternatives to criminal prosecution or incarceration in a penal institution, and individuals detained pending arraignment, trial, or sentencing. So essentially, during their entire their entire prison sentence, they can go through the research treatments. But this also does mean that if they are free to the public or they get out, that they may not be applicable for the research anymore, and they'd have to go through a different process altogether. Um, there's minimal risk is the probability and magnitude of physical and psychological harm that is normally encountered in the daily lives or in the routine medical, dental, and physiological examination of healthy persons. So essentially, they're assuming that a lot of the participants that are going to be in the study that are prisoners are healthy from a psychological, physiological standpoint and are able to continue within the trial and not break any of the HHS rules. So the specific scripture that applies to this, I feel like, is 13:1-3 Hebrews, which is keep on loving one another as brothers and sisters. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. Continue to remember those in prison as if you were together with them in prison, and those who are mistreated as if you yourselves were suffering. Now, this essentially gives the humanity aspect of what it is like for prisoners and to be held and stuck in prison. It does not mean that they're any less of a human being or have any less rights. Obviously, they're regulated to a specific degree, but essentially treating them as human beings, just as you would a normal average individual that is outside of prison. They deserve the same rights and rules as We do. Thank you guys for being a part of this faith integration, and I will talk to you guys later.